Do you want me to start the intro? Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Bon matin, tout le monde. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse par Bill Blair, ministre de la Défense nationale du Canada, et Boris Pistorius, ministre de la Défense de l'Allemagne. Welcome to today's press conference with Canadian Defense Minister Bill Blair and German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. To begin today's event, the ministers will sign a letter of intent concerning funding for the purchase of air defense capabilities for the Ukrainian armed forces. Thank you. Minister Blair and Minister Pistorius will now deliver remarks. Following their remarks, they will take questions from the press.
Good morning. Guten Tag. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to National Defense Headquarters. It's my very great and sincere pleasure this morning to welcome my German counterpart and my friend, Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, to Canada. Earlier this morning, I had the opportunity to accompany Minister Pistorius as he laid a wreath at the National War Memorial. And we have come to National Headquarters where we've just concluded a very productive bilateral meeting regarding our mutual support for Ukraine, our commitments to NATO, and I had the opportunity to brief him on Canada's new defense policy, Our North, Strong and Free. As the current global security situation continues to change, the defense relationship between our two countries is growing more and more important. Canadian Armed Forces members deployed in Germany are performing a wide range of vital tasks, including the Security Assistance Group, Ukraine, and working with allies to deter and defend against threats to our NATO alliance. I want to take this opportunity to thank Minister Pistorius for his hospitality in Germany, for making Canadian personnel feel at home. When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, he believed it would be a swift victory for Russia. He was wrong. Democracies stood together to defend democracy, to protect the rule of law, and to secure Ukraine's freedom. And since the start of the war, both Canada and Germany have been proud and steadfast supporters of Ukraine, and that support must continue. Ukraine has made it very clear to us that they need ongoing long-term support. And Minister Pistorius, Canada has also heard your call for the international community to step up and to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia. And that is why today I'm very pleased to announce that Canada will contribute $76 million to Germany's immediate action on air defense initiative. This initiative pools money and resources from the international community to quickly source and deliver air defense systems and missiles for Ukraine. And this investment will help Ukraine defend itself against the brutal attacks that have destroyed hospitals, power plants, and apartment blocks, and have killed thousands of innocent Ukrainians. Canada welcomes and is grateful for Germany's leadership of this crucial initiative. Together, we will stand for Ukraine for as long as it takes. This war has also reminded all of us, all of our countries, of the importance of NATO. Canada thanks Germany for the work that their country has doing to bolster that alliance. Canada and Germany are both leading NATO battle groups in Latvia and Lithuania. We are partners and neighbors. And these battle groups, which are made up of troops from across the alliance, are strengthening the defense of NATO's eastern flank. And as Canada works to scale up its battle group to a full brigade in Latvia, I also want to commend Germany for doing the same thing in lockstep and partnership in Lithuania. Establishing this larger NATO presence in the Baltic region sends a very clear message to Putin, to Russia, and to all potential adversaries that we are prepared to stand united to defend every inch of NATO territory. Minister Pistorius, Boris, thank you once again for your friendship with Canada. I'm confident in the future of our excellent defense relationship at this crucial time in history. Canada is very fortunate to be able to count Germany as one of our closest friends, and I look forward to other renewed opportunities for us to work even closer together in the future. Thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Mr. Pistorius. Boris.
Thank you very much, Bill, and thank you very much for the warm hospitality since I arrived here last night, and thank you very much for your friendship and your loyalty and your commitment to NATO and what we have to do together. It is not my first trip to Canada, but my first one as a Minister of Defense. 2 years ago, I came here as a Minister of the Interior of Lower Saxony. And it's great to be back. At that time, I was busy with issues like migration and firefighting, forest firefightings, and so on. And by the way, it's worth to mention that Bill and me, we have kind of similar professional roots, because he used to be, everybody knows it, of course, here, Chief of Police in Toronto, and afterwards Minister for Public Security. And I used to be, for 10 years, Minister of Interior in Lower Saxony, so quite similar careers, and now we are standing here and working together, and I'm very grateful for that. This warm welcome in Ottawa underlines our strong partnership and friendship. German and Canadian soldiers have served shoulder to shoulder in many theaters during the last decades. For myself, I met the first Canadian soldiers when I was a young man in Germany, so good history and good memories. Our two countries are firmly committed to supporting the Ukrainian people in its fight against Russia. And in that context, I would really like to underline my real crucial, great gratitude. Thanks for signing the letter of intent you just mentioned. Thanks for contributing 76 million Canadian dollars for the initiative Immediate Action on Air Defense. That will help a lot. It will help us buy and deliver air defense systems like IRIS-T missiles due to be delivered during the coming weeks. And we all know, not only since yesterday, that air defense systems save lives every day and every night. With this contribution, Canada clearly shows its resolute commitment to a rules-based international order and to the values that also guide us in the transatlantic alliance. Cooperation with Canada and Germany already includes a variety of different measures. Our collaboration is strategic, whether on land, at sea, or underwater. The 3+3 format for the stationing of troops on the eastern flank, together with the United Kingdom and the Baltic states, has proven to be effective. The format is a useful tool for our very important coordination in the Baltics. Just as we are in the process of deploying a permanent brigade, robust brigade in Lithuania, you are also taking steps towards moving a brigade to Latvia. What does that mean to us? Cooperation matters even more than ever before. I'm glad that our naval units, 2 vessels, will soon be able to visit Halifax next week for a port visit and on their way to the Indo-Pacific as part of our Indo-Pacific deployment. Both our navies participate in the maritime enforcement of sanctions against North Korea. And cooperation matters. I handed over to my Canadian colleague, Bill, a joint letter signed by our Norwegian colleague and myself with a proposal. Let us initiate a trilateral strategic maritime partnership with a focus on securing sea lines of communication through the North Atlantic and Arctic. This can become a political roof for many joint activities. Thank you for your interest and for your open mind. Canada has adopted a new defense update, just as we have also put in place new guidelines for our defense policy. This is an important signal for the upcoming NATO summit in Washington. Bill, you are planning the first winter edition of the Invictus Games in 2025 next year. In Düsseldorf, I passed the baton of the Invictus Games on to Canada. For Germany, organizing the Games generated a lot of optimism, and I really enjoyed taking part. And it generated a greater awareness of the special hardships military personnel are often faced with. This will be a great opportunity for you, and you will love to experience the joie de vivre and see such great will and determination. I will do whatever I can to be able to celebrate this event with you in February to come. Thanks a lot.
Boris, thank you.
The ministers will now be happy to take questions from media. If you could please go to the mics on either side of the room and state your name and your outlet before asking your question, please.
Maybe we can start with the German reporter. Good. We're hosting you.
Thank you very much.
That was so Canadian. Well done.
Thank you, Minister.
So kind. Thank you so much for your statements. I'm Henry Donovan from Politico, and we basically had a really nice and interesting, informative press briefing before here. And I have two questions. The first one regarding the LOI you just signed on the defense of the air defense systems for Ukraine. Is there a concrete timeline of when this will be executed? And it will entail IRIS-T, but will it also entail maybe also different defense systems? And the second question is regarding the northern frontier of Canada's defense sphere. We heard that due to global warming, the waters there are becoming accessible all year long and are being threatened by forces from Russia and China. Have you two discussed this also in NATO cooperation, and what are there concrete next steps for maybe reassuring Canadian borders in the north?
Yeah, if I may begin, and then I'll turn it to my friend. First of all, we're very grateful for Germany's leadership. One of the things, we recently had a meeting that was hosted by the Secretary General of NATO, but at which President Zelensky spoke. And they were very clear. President Zelensky made it very clear that Ukraine is in desperate and urgent need of air and missile defense. Now, all of the allies have been working very hard to deliver that capability to Ukraine. Canada, for example, has entered into an agreement with the United States to deliver a new NASAMS system as part of a larger package of supports. But what we have also found is that is taking time that perhaps Ukraine may not have, and because there is an urgency to what they require. We have seen, for example, where there was a requirement for expedited delivery of munitions. Other European countries, such as Czechoslovakia, the Czechs have stepped up and created a consortium and a possibility for us to deliver that quicker, and Canada joined that. But what we heard very clearly from the Ukrainians was an urgent, desperate need for air defense, and I personally am very grateful. Canada does not have a significant capability of producing those munitions, and the time of production and the time of acquisition is frankly a great challenge. Through Germany's leadership, they have made it possible for those of us who may not have that capacity but want to help to step up, and I'm very pleased that Canada is able to contribute $76 million, as we've just announced, to that initiative. The timing and the acquisitions, quite frankly, I'm very grateful for the leadership and the expertise of the Germans in acquiring that. But they have given Canada a great opportunity to deliver not just what Ukraine needs, but when they need it. And so I think that's significant. And with respect to the second part of your question, if I may, we know that, first of all, Canada's national defense is my job one. And I'm Canada's Minister of National Defense. We have an obligation to our allies on the continent with the United States, but also to our allies throughout NATO, to make sure that we are strong at home so that we can also be strong for our allies around the world. And so we have said to our new defense policy, we recognize that our Arctic faces new and emerging challenges. Through climate change, much of the region is becoming far more accessible. It was a time I think we might have been able to rely on ice to help defend the continent. But climate change is challenging that assumption. And so we know that we need to be stronger and more persistently present in the region. We also see that through the emergence of new technologies, as we saw with the Iranian attack on Israel, with the way Russia has attacked Ukraine, there are a number of emerging technological threats that we need to be able to respond to. And we have seen the actions of our adversaries. Germany and Canada have stood side by side for 80 years defending the international rules-based order that has kept our globe safe. And those rules are being challenged by some of our adversaries, and we need to respond with strength and resolve and unity. And I think that's what we're celebrating and working hard to continue with today.
Well, I just only want to add one remark. First of all, thanks again for your very important contribution to our initiative. And as I mentioned earlier, the IRIS-T missiles will be delivered during the weeks to come. So very soon and very quickly, because we don't have time to lose.
De Radio-Canada. I understand there is this new investment that's $76 million in the air defense system this morning, but the fact is Canada won't reach its 2% GDP required by NATO and has no plan to do it. And you in Germany will be able to do so this year. Did you ask Minister Pistorius to Mr. Blair to do more and to invest more in his military system?
Well, as I mentioned, I have been mentioning and underlining that during the last weeks, almost every day. We achieved this year, first time since I think the early 90s, 2%, the 2% pledge of GDP. But it won't be the last time. And I'm absolutely convinced that 2% can only be the floor, but not the ceiling. This is what we are talking all the time when it comes to our defense ministers' meetings in Brussels or anywhere else. So we are planning to do 2% plus in the years to come. But the much more important parameter is that we have enough money to procure now and to order now what we need in the years to come. Because if you talk about a submarine, if you talk about a frigate, if you talk about tanks, it takes years to produce and to deliver, and therefore we have to do it now, because at that point it's the same. We don't have time to lose. So we are improving, and we already spent our 100 billion special fund, which we have invented in 2 years ago, and the 100 billions are at the end of the year they will be totally bound by contracts. So then we need more money, new fresh money anyway. And we are working on that in these weeks inside the government and the parliament to achieve that.
And if I may respond as well, because I think I want to acknowledge our new defense policy does not quite get us to 2%, but it's a remarkable, I think, in new investment in defense. Our defense budget next year over this year is going to rise by 27%. That's a very significant investment for Canada, and I think it's a very significant investment. I hope it creates confidence among our NATO partners that Canada is on a clear upward trajectory of defense spending. We know we have to do more, and we are absolutely committed to do it. We have articulated those things that we are going to immediately begin spending money on, and it gets us much closer to that target, but not yet there. But I'd invite you to take a look into the document itself, because we also acknowledge in the defense policy we have to make many other significant new investments in air and missile defense, for example, and in underwater surveillance. There are a number of absolutely essential capabilities that Canada knows it must invest in. But we've got a little bit of work to do between now and then, because as Mr. Pistorius mentioned, it's important to have the money to spend, but it's also important to spend it well. To make the investments, one of the things we have learned together is that by working together, and in sharing and collaborating more effectively in the development of some of these very complex and expensive platforms, there's a real opportunity for us to create better value for our taxpayers, but also better values for our NATO alliance. And so, as the Prime Minister has indicated, we know that we're going to have to replace our aging submarine fleet, for example. That currently is not in the budget projection, but we have said we've got work to do, and we're now doing that work. We know that we're going to have to invest for continental defense in new, more robust and resilient integrated air and missile defense systems for the continent and for Canada. Those expenditures must inevitably take us beyond 2%, and I'm able to provide assurances to our NATO allies. Canada is on a clear trajectory to fulfill our obligations here at home and to the NATO alliance.
Thank you. Gillian Piper with Global News. Britain's foreign secretary is urging NATO members to spend 2.5% of GDP on defense. How aligned are you on that goal, and when would you be able to meet that 2.5% target?
Yeah, well, again, we've made a commitment to the NATO target, which is 2%, and we're working really hard to get that. But as I've just explained to the previous questions, some of the investments we're going to have to make in the capabilities we know Canada requires to do our job, do our job of defending the Arctic, defending the North Atlantic, being persistently present and effective in the Indo-Pacific. All of those things are going to require additional investments that will take us, I have great confidence, will take Canada well to and even beyond the 2%. Listen, I also want to acknowledge the commitment of all of our NATO allies. Everybody has stepped up, and I think we were reflecting a little bit in our conversation today. Just in the last 2 years, it really has been remarkable since Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, how NATO has come together, has become stronger with the advent of new members, but also every member of NATO is seized with the urgency of doing more, and we're all doing more together.
Good morning, Minister Pistorius. Ashley Burke, CBC News. Is your country prepared to push the Leopard tank makers to increase spare part production?
It's not necessary to push them because they do whatever they can. The problem or the challenge is we can easily provide more spare parts for the Leopard tank 2A6, for example, but for 2A4 there is no production line, so we have to collect those spare parts all over the world and try to get more of them by, I don't know how fast it's possible to start with a new production line. But at the moment, this is particularly a challenge for those countries who used to use Leopard 2A4 tanks in the recent past. We have been using only the Leopard tank 2A6, and we have spare parts for that, and we are delivering spare parts for that to Ukraine too.
I could just do a question from German media. Go ahead.
Peter Dowson for the German weekly Die Zeit. Minister Blair, the Canadian troops seem to have a very similar problem as the German troops have. You cannot find enough young men and young women in order to reach the number of soldiers you want to have. So what are your plans in order to make the Canadian armed forces more attractive? And for Mr. Pistorius, the whole Germany, or at least the whole German press, which is almost the same, is waiting for your plans. For improvement of the recruitment. When are you going to present them?
If I may, let me begin. I think getting the people that the Canadian Armed Forces need is job number one. You know, we talk about the acquisition of planes and boats and submarines and technologies and munitions and artillery pieces, but if you don't have the people to sail on those boats, you don't have the people to fly those planes, if you don't have the people, that's the critical need within the Canadian Armed Forces, and quite frankly, we're short, 16,500 from our current authorized strength, and I believe that our current authorized strength needs to grow. I in fact believe that from my current staffing levels, I need 30,000 additional members of the Canadian Armed Forces. And so the current processes that we've been engaged in aren't getting the job done. So I'm absolutely committed to re-examining all of those processes. We have to go faster. You know, you talked about the challenge of recruiting good Canadian talent to join our armed forces. That is not as big a problem as we sometimes talk about. Over 70,000 Canadians applied for the Canadian Armed Forces last year. But unfortunately, our onboarding processes of security background checks, medical background checks, and training resulted in only a little over 4,000 of those people actually becoming members of the service. We simply have to do better, and we're going to do better. And I think with the investments we're making in the Canadian Armed Forces, some of the changes that we're making to ensure that it's a welcoming, respectful, and supportive work environment, that we're dealing with some issues that our soldiers are dealing with housing challenges, health challenges, childcare challenges, we're working to address that as well, because we want to not only recruit and onboard the best talent, we want to retain some of the great people we've got. And so that's the work that's underway. I think it is the most important task before us. It's a problem that must be solved, and we're going to do it.
And I give you a short answer and maybe answer a little bit longer. The short answer is soon, very soon. The answer a little bit longer is I agreed with my colleagues in the government and in the parties who are the base of our government, that we talk before I go to public. And I am used to fulfill what I promised, so I will go there to make the discussions next week, I think, and then I will, at least it is in the last week of May, come out with my proposal.
Thanks.
Dylan Robertson with the Canadian Press. Also have a two-part question, one for each minister. Minister Pistorius, I'm wondering if Canada is doing enough as a military partner. And Minister Blair, I'm wondering what the timeline is for the NASAM systems that we had promised a year and a half ago from the US.
Well, there is no reason at all for me to complain about Canada's engagement. The opposite is the case. We are working very closely together. Our relationship is absolutely fantastic and reliable. Bill Blair does what he said before, and you can always rely on that. And we have all the same challenges in our domestic politics. We need to find money, we need to find personnel, we need to increase our production capacities in the industry. So the challenges are the same, and each one is working as hard as possible to face their challenges and to solve the problems. This is all I can say. I really enjoy our relationship and our cooperation.
And as I said before, the NASAM system, for example, about a little over a year ago, Ukraine made it very clear they urgently needed an investment in NASAM systems, and Canada immediately said yes. We went to the manufacturer, and unfortunately the production schedule that was available would have taken several years. And so we tried to move faster, and as we do with our allies and our friends, and we sought help in acquiring that ASAM system quicker. We went to the United States. In this case, the United States was already acquiring a number of NASAM systems, some of which were for Ukraine, and we asked if we can join that initiative to expedite delivery. Canada immediately delivered $400 million to the Americans to facilitate that purchase. That contract has now been signed. That work is underway. Production is taking place. We are part of that production schedule. I've worked very closely with the U.S. ambassador here, and it's a conversation I'll have again next week when I'm in Washington. But we're all working as hard and as fast as possible to deliver what Ukraine needs. But I also am quite willing to seize the opportunity that, for example, Germany gave us, because they were able to expedite acquisition, again, of missile defense systems that Canada would have taken simply years to acquire. And so by working in partnership and by providing that funding to Germany, Germany is able to get real value for our dollars in support of Ukraine by making sure that they not only get what they want, but they get it faster.
I believe that is all the time we have today for questions. That wraps up today's press conference. Ci conclut notre conférence de presse. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for being here.